But we tried to find a place where the person, which is kind of a embodiment of violence itself, is believable, and people can get related to him in somehow.
Playing a psychopath isn't easy, as you've already seen some of the most iconic actors display it one way, and you're still somehow expected to carve out another. With that in mind, Javier Bardem was careful not to rewatch cinema's most famous villains, out of fear he would end up accidentally copying them. Instead, he wanted to capture the cold emptiness of a detached psychopath, a killing machine. During filming, he felt isolated and lost, stating, "I was taken to the middle of America to play this very dark role within an American cast and American crew for the first time in my life. So I felt kind of alone and absolutely detached from the whole surroundings. I guess some of that jumped into the character as well, because he was somebody who was emotionally detached from others." Bardem was born in Spain. After his father abandoned the family, his mother was left to raise the children by herself. And although they faced financial hardship, his mother was an actress from a long line of Spanish filmmakers. This meant that Javier would be on film sets a lot growing up, making his television debut in El Pícaro at just 6 years old. He struggled as an actor for years until he received critical acclaim for his role in Before Night Falls. And despite the financial failure of the film, his standout performance earned him his first ever Oscar nomination for Best Actor in the year 2000. After this, he would of course star in Spanish-speaking films, but still only pop up in smaller English-speaking roles in Hollywood movies like Michael Mann's Collateral. But then in 2007, everything would change when he was cast in the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men, and it was now, at the age of 37, that he would capture the audience's imagination as Anton Chigurh, earning him his first Oscar for Best Supporting Actor and redefining our expectations for how a cinematic psychopath should behave. But what is it about this portrayal that makes it so chilling? Let's examine how Javier Bardem perfected Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. The first key is the physicality of the character. Cormac McCarthy's book never really described what Chigurh looked like, so the Coen brothers took some liberties, brilliantly deciding to give Javier this atrocious haircut that immediately puts you on edge. This way, something is off about the character right from the start. And this isn't a wig, this was his actual hair for the full 3 months of filming. For the first time in his career, the actor had to put a lot of work in to lose or neutralize his accent, and Bardem's naturally deep voice contributed to the dark, foreboding nature of the character.
What business is it of yours? Where I'm from? Friendo?
To showcase the emotional detachment of the character, notice how Javier's vocal delivery is always neutral. Unlike other villains, with Chigurh it's never a crime of passion. He's not seeking pleasure or having the time of his life. He just doesn't care whether you live or die. It makes no emotional difference to him, and you can sense that through his uninvolved pitch. While he does technically occasionally smile throughout the film, it never feels like he does, as it's only really displayed to disarm his next victim, and there's always this empty void hiding behind his performative grin. Another detail I love about his interpretation is the stillness of the character. Everything is done so calmly and methodically. He doesn't rush, he just moves at his own pace. For example, check out this moment as he opens the door and just sits on the sofa with a bottle of milk. While the milk does add a comedic aspect to the scene, there's something so unsettling about just watching the killer sit and be with himself. He's not thinking or calculating, he's just existing, with his breaths hissing in and out like a wild beast. But strangely, one of the most iconic physical components of the character is his walk. His hands always dangle by his sides, the same hands we just watched him murder a police officer with in the opening scene. This makes him feel imposing and menacing, but also somewhat alien, reminiscent of the Frankenstein-style monster Lurch from the Addams Family. He walks slowly, step by step, ready to face whatever or whomever he encounters with an equal degree of savagery. The next key is his uncomfortable use of eye contact. As we discussed, Bardem somehow maintains a lifeless void behind his eyes so that he feels soulless and amoral. He looks at people with no sense of common humanity, and once he locks his eyes onto his target, he never stops, wearing them down with his relentless stare. In the famous gas station scene, notice how differently both actors play it in terms of eye contact. The proprietor meets Anton's gaze with a spooked expression, trying to win him over with pleasantries and connect with him as a human being. But Bardem just stares at him with unbroken eye contact, adding a level of malevolence by slowly chewing on his cashews as he toys with the idea of murdering him. So the proprietor keeps looking down and away to try to break the tension and end the exchange peacefully. But Bardem just stands there, unmoved, not making any motion that he's going anywhere. He's holding his ground. Even though it's nowhere in the script, watch how Bardem communicates his character's disgust that his new victim married into his wife's family business.
You married into it.
By choking on the nut, he breaks his impenetrable gaze. So now we really understand that the proprietor has said something wrong. His life is now up for grabs. Bardem then improvises this exhausted exhale as if he's tired of playing around and insists he calls the coin toss.
Call it.
Call it.
Yes.
For what?
Just call it.
But his apathetic tone adds a degree of inevitability to proceedings, as if here we go again, finding human beings so frustrating and boring to coexist with. We see a similar huff of inevitability later when talking on the phone to Moss.
You know how this is gonna turn out, don't you?
But back at the gas station, once he flips the coin, now Bardem finally breaks eye contact, as he no longer has anything to decipher, and instead surrenders his fate to the coin. Throughout this whole scene, the proprietor looks at Chigurh with submission, weakness, and vulnerability. He's caught up in something he doesn't understand, so his eyes are scattershot, searching for answers. Whereas Bardem plays it firmly down the line, to signal that he's the one in control. One character is trying to break away and hide from the conflict, while the other is engaging and stewing in it without any resistance, making a simple exchange of goods rife with tension. This leads directly into our final key, finding comfort in violence. On a personal level, Javier Bardem doesn't like violence in movies, but he felt this project was different.
Yeah, I have this problem with violence in movies, but I understood how violence is a very important character in this movie, since the movie is making a statement about it.
But what's so disturbing about this performance is how comfortable the psychopath is with his crimes. How he can watch someone slowly dying like a wounded animal in front of him and feel nothing. Like a killing machine, he just wanders from place to place, snatching lives like the Grim Reaper. In his first murder, the script describes a lot of the physical movement of the victim, but almost nothing about Chigurh himself. So to spice things up, Bardem adopts this demented, wide-eyed look as he strangles the life out of the officer, looking like he's possessed by a higher calling. It's a brilliantly directed scene, capturing the raw nature of violence itself as a fellow human being wriggles around like an animal desperate to survive. This feeds into one of No Country for Old Men's bigger themes, being hunted like prey by your fellow man. But in order to capture his character's nonchalance in the face of violence, the actor conveys little details that really add to the cold tone of the action. For instance, in the motel, the script simply reads, Chigurh goes to the bed and sits to take off his boots. But rather than whipping them off, Bardem very mechanically removes his boots one after the other. He never gasps to show he's tired or show any emotion whatsoever. Instead, he plays it stiff and systematic. He's not nervous about what he's about to do. He feels nothing about it. Then after going into the wrong room and killing the wrong man, he remains locked in, his eyes facing forward without ever turning as he smoothly closes the door behind him with his foot. Very professional. After killing 2 more men like it's nothing, he then sits on the bed again, in no way rattled that he's just taken 3 lives. Instead, he seems relaxed, no anxiety, no nothing, as he now peels off his socks that are soaked in blood. Now, most of us would want to imagine a killer feeling the immediate need to flee the scene, but the Coens instruct their actor to just sit in the scene of the crime as if he's chilling out in his living room. It's as if the dead bodies don't exist because they mean nothing to him. We see this same level of comfort later after he kills Carson. The phone rings and rings, but rather than rushing to answer it to keep his crime scene silent, he scooches the chair into position to get nice and comfy before he picks it up. Then, to further emphasize his lack of guilt, when Carson's blood begins to pool beneath his feet, even though it's not in the script, Bardem slowly sticks his feet up on the bed, looking more like a guy taking a relaxing break than a man who's just murdered someone who's still bleeding out in front of him. These little details, accompanied by the character's lack of urgency and haunting sense of calm, make this probably the most accurate depiction of a psychopath ever portrayed on screen. No Country for Old Men is just one of the Coen brothers' many masterpieces, with some of the most tense action sequences you're likely to ever see. But depending on who they cast as Anton Chigurh, the film would have turned out totally differently, as no 2 actors will share the same interpretation. So we easily could have had a Joker or Hannibal Lecter-style killer bouncing around Texas, wiping people out. But instead, Bardem didn't oversell his character's psychopathy. Instead, he played it straight, hollow and empty, and yet you still can't take your eyes off him. As it turns out, nothing is more terrifying than being hunted down by someone who isn't distracted by any emotion at all, as they can't be rationed or reasoned with, when to them you're just another bug, splatting on their windshield. So if you made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now click like, subscribe, and the notification bell, as otherwise that pesky algorithm will continue to suppress my videos from your feed.